You probably don't know this, but I used to be a competitive fencer when I was younger. I was nationally ranked, and I had a coach at one time who said, when I lost a bout, you're allowed to be upset about it for 30 seconds because you do have to have acknowledge those emotions, but then you need to move on.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. And of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. We are joined today by a very talented comic artist. She is the creator of the Boston Metaphysical Society. She is, of course, very talented, a writer and creator. I've just recently seen her work, and I'm actively reading through her archive, which is rather entertaining. We're joined today by, of course, Madeleine Holly-Rosing. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Anytime. You look like you're good friends with, of course, two people I've interviewed in the past, Jules Rivera and Christine Shin as well.
Jules and Christina, we go back a ways. I think we first met on Twitter, wow, years ago, and then like met up for lunch and then see each other at cons and then helped each other with Kickstarters. And yeah, Jules hit the Kickstarter stage before I did, so I learned a lot from her. And yeah, yeah, we've been hanging around for quite a bit, and
That's awesome.
and they're both amazingly talented human beings.
For sure. That being said, jumping into, of course, your comic here, tell us what Boston Metaphysical Society is all about. And you're right,
See,
that is.
you see, I told you it was a mouthful. Yeah, imagine, that when I had to get the URL for, the domain name for it, and it was like, okay, just type in Boston Metaphysical Society. Yeah, it's a thing.
Good thing
Anyway,
short links are a thing.
yes. The premise of the story is about an ex-Pinkerton detective, a spirit photographer, and a genius scientist who battle supernatural forces in late 1800s Boston. We started with a 6-issue miniseries, which went to trade paperback. Our original artist was Emily Hugh, and she was on board for all 6 issues, bless her heart. We were picked up by Source Point Press about a year and a half ago. But in the meantime, we have produced 3 sequels, and we currently have the 4th sequel on Kickstarter right now called The Book of Demons. And for the sequels, we also got a new artist on board by the name of Gwen Tavares, who not only does the art, but the coloring as well.
Yeah, I've looked at the Kickstarter campaign. I'm reading the archive that you have currently on the website. Interesting cast of characters. Love the setting. Love the steampunk-esque series that you're creating here. The fact that you're in the 19th century is amazing, because that's a wonderful time period in terms of you can do almost anything from a historical perspective. Excuse me.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. There was the decision-making process to put the series there wasn't that difficult. Even though this is Boston Metaphysical is an alternate history universe with steampunk elements, but yet I take historical figures from the time period. Bell, Edison, Tesla, and Houdini are part of the story in the original 6-issue miniseries. And but what's unique about that time is that literally in Western society, everything was changing. Everything was in flux. Society, economics, technology, everything was changing. So for a writer, it's pretty much fertile ground to go play in. And so you can move things up, you can move things back. I mean, you can really play with it, particularly when you're working within an alternate history universe. And that was a lot of fun. I really had a good time with that.
Did you find it was necessary to showcase history in this light?
Um,
From a
I
writer's
just,
perspective? Sorry.
I guess I just wanted to write a good story. And I started with a story with the three main characters and then brought in the major historical characters later on. And for those of you who don't know, one of the leads, Granville T. was a historical figure himself and was a contemporary of Bell, Edison, and Tesla. There's no evidence that I could find that he and Tesla actually met in real life, but he definitely knew Edison and he knew Bell. There's a fun story where the real Granville sued Edison for stealing some of his patents, and he won, which is amazing. And then Edison offered him a job. I guess at that point, Edison just figured, well, if I couldn't steal things from him, just outright steal, then I'll just hire him and take his work. He said no to that and started his own company with his brother in upstate New York. But being the writer, I could bring all these characters to Boston and create my own universe. Samuel, who's the ex-Pinkerton detective, and Caitlin, they're both fictional characters.
Well, hey, I mean, it's a great story overall from what I'm currently reading, and I can't wait to see the Book of Demons. As this series has evolved, though, from a writer's perspective, though, what has been the hardest aspect of writing this series, and what's been the most enjoyable?
The hardest is time management. This is now a full-time gig for me, and for those of who run their own business and yeah, and don't know the aspects of, you have to handle the taxes and all the administrative side. I do a lot of cons during the year when there's not a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to apply to the cons. You have to put together travel arrangements and hotels and local taxes. And if you're out of state, local, state taxes and, everything in between. So that takes an enormous amount of time. So, one of my greatest challenges is actually having time to be creative at this point. So I really have to lock in that time management, get what absolutely has to be done on the administrative side so I can go be creative and produce more things. And so, yeah, I don't like doing the who likes doing administrative tasks? I mean, that's not very fun. And I actually include social media in that as well, because that is an administrative task, whether you like it or not. And then sometimes you just have to be social on social media and because that's actually fun. You talk to people and exchange ideas and have a good time. But I think the most enjoyable thing is when I come up with a new storyline that takes me, or rather it takes the characters to a place I hadn't thought they were going to go before. And that's always a lot of fun. And that's kind of what's been happening with every one of these sequels. The first sequel, The Scourge of the Mechanical Man, features Tesla and Granville Woods. And I'd had that planned for quite a long time, because it's finishes up the Tesla arc that started within the original 6-issue miniseries. And then from then we go into a longer Caitlin arc. Because the original 6-issue miniseries was really about Samuel and all of this, the shifter and his issues and where that's all going and where that's all coming from. And it's been a lot of fun to see where Caitlin goes and how all these experiences have affected her. And I was inspired by some questions from fans, which was great, because I kind of went like, oh, okay, that's interesting. She went through this, so this is going to change her, but how is it going to change her? And how she evolved, and how her relationship with Samuel evolves over time. And And then as you get into the sequels, you'll see that I bring another character in who is now part of the team. You see her on the cover of the Book of Demons, which is what we're on the campaign trail for right now on Kickstarter. And she also is a scientist. She's about 10 years older than Caitlin, a little more worldly, more educated, but with a very different worldview. And, I really grew to like her when I started writing her in The Spirit of Rebellion. So I thought, she really needs to be part of the team, and so that was great.
Awesome. So what's book 2 and book 3 then?
Okay, I know it gets confusing. Yeah. That's why on my website I have a story chronology, because this thing is getting huge, and I get that. And in fact, that reminds me, I should probably go put on the Kickstarter page, this is the story chronology, because this is getting so huge. Yes, it begins. Everything starts with the 6-issue miniseries. And from then, it's the Scourge of the Mechanical Men, the Spirit of Rebellion, Ghosts and Demons, and then the 4th sequel, the Book of Demons, which kind of finishes off a mini arc that I had with Ghosts and Demons.
A lot of backstory. I have a lot of archives I'm going to have to go through, a lot of books I'm going to have to purchase, so that's a good thing. I'm enjoying the story. I'm enjoying the characters that I've said before. So this started back in 2013.
Yeah.
2021 now, 8 years of a wonderful ride so far. Obviously, you're continuing your series.
Yes.
Think back to the very first comic convention you went to with this book in hand. What was that like for you?
That was pretty astounding. If I recall correctly, I think it was APE in San Francisco, when we still had APE. And for those of you who don't know, that's the Alternative Press Expo. And I was traveling with a friend, and we shared a table, which I recommend to all new creators who have their first books out there. Go, don't waste your money on a whole table, because you're not going to fill it up. Split it with a friend, travel together, save on, everything. Because it's, it adds up at the end. But what I did with the first chapter, just to get it out there, is I did a expanded version of the first chapter. I think it was like 44 pages long, maybe 48, and it was perfect bound. And I put in a whole bunch of extras, just so I'd have something to sell there. I only had like 100 copies made. That was it. And I sold it, and I was so shocked. And I mean, I didn't have a banner. I didn't have anything. It was just me and the book, and I had some postcards and standing behind a table, and people bought it. And I was like, oh my God, maybe I actually have something here. It was astounding to me. Is what you probably don't also realize is that during the production of the original 6-issue miniseries, I was also writing a series of short stories and novellas that were prequels to the comic.
Huh.
And I was using that to establish canon for the universe. It's now in an anthology called Prelude, which is also available on the Kickstarter. And I then later wrote a prequel novel called A Storm of Secrets, which begins about 5 years prior to the original 6-issue miniseries.
Awesome! Wow, you've definitely put the work in.
Oh yeah, yeah. When I look back, I'll go like, oh yeah, I guess I have been doing a lot of work. I finish something and then I just move on, and okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? What's next? And so yeah, there's a lot of things in the hopper right now.
So you have a lot more work to do, obviously.
Yes, because we are in pre-production for the audio drama. The first Boston Metaphysical audio drama. We're doing actually callbacks this afternoon for the leads. So I hope to announce who those leads are sometime this week, I hope. We got some terrific actors who had applied for the job, auditioned for the job,
Mhm.
and it is called The Ghost Ship and takes place within the time period of the 6-issue miniseries. So we only the leads are Samuel, Granville, and Caitlin. Alma. This is pre Alma, and this is not to slight Alma. This was a budgetary decision. Every what people don't realize is, like, as a creative, so much you have to look at the budget and say, what can I do? What is realistic to do? And then you can start planning around that. And I advise that to everyone, because I don't want people to end up in a financial hole, because that's just absolutely no fun. So I always recommend, when I'm consulting anyone on a Kickstarter, get that budget down, know what you can handle, and don't deviate from that.
As much as you may want to deviate from that.
As much as you may want to deviate from that, yeah.
So the audio drama is going to be available through.
Well, it will be on Kickstarter first. Okay. That will be in the fall sometime, and I haven't decided what platform it's going to be on, because there is a lot to choose from out there, and it seems to be growing. So, yeah, I'm going to wait on that. But first of all, when it's all done, it goes to the backers first, and it'll be available by download or flash drive or CD. We actually already have the cover art ready to go for the CD, and Gwen Tavares did it, and it looks beautiful. And we will be sending out casting notices in a few weeks for the supporting roles.
Awesome. That's
so
great.
Yeah, so it's like I said, this world just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing, and I never expected it. This originally was a TV pilot that I wrote while I was attending the MFA program in screenwriting at UCLA. And it had, it made the rounds and people liked it, but this was pre-steampunk. Steampunk hadn't made this the mainstream, and people are kind of frightened of it. They didn't know what to do with it, and that's fine. So it was suggested to me that I turned it into a graphic novel to then use it as marketing material to go back to TV and film. Well, the problem with that is that I discovered that I really love writing comics, and I absolutely adore the indie comic creator community. It's just a wonderful community to be in. And so I just went, forget it. I'm just going to keep going forward. This is working. We're having a great time. We're getting great response. Let's just keep moving forward. And that's what I did.
It's amazing to have a passion in one area to convert to something you may never have even thought of. Who brought up the idea for it to become a graphic novel?
It was, God, who was it? I don't remember. It was back in school. There was actually a couple people, I think, who mentioned that to me. And so I went back to school and learned how to write a comic. So my venture into comics is very, very late in life, even though my brother probably has one of the largest graded collections of Daredevil comics in the United States.
Wow.
But superhero comics just never interested me. They just was like, whatever. I wasn't interested. But then when I started taking the class, I was introduced to indie comics, and I was kind of pissed off because these were great, and no one had told me about it before. It's like, why has everyone been hiding this from me? I was just annoyed at all of that. And, particularly reading Y: The Last Man and, Astro City and Watchmen. And then, I was getting all this stuff from the library and just pouring through it late at night. I'm like going, why has no one told me this before? So, yeah, it was late, but I got here.
That's good. and we're glad you're here. Yeah, when I started reading indie comics, for me it was all web comics, so it was all comics online. So for me it was, and that's how the show started, was a 4,000 web comic list that I had with a friend of mine, Phil, And that's how I started reading these comics, just day to day to day, and it was broken up into months and weeks and when they updated and all this other stuff. And so seeing someone that's converted from script writing to graphic novels is wonderful to see, because honestly everyone could use more graphic novels.
Of course. Of course. And the beauty of it is it's both script writing and comic book writing are both visual writing. And but the upside with comic book writing is you do get to direct, which you don't get to do with a film script. In fact, they get their panties in a bunch if you do that. The script format is set. It's very rigid. Comic book format is really a document to communicate to your artist and your colorist. It's a document to communicate to your team. And so that's how I use it. Not only is there obviously a story there and dialogue, but there'll be notes to Gwen or notes to Troy. I'll add images for Gwen to help her if she needs any research help on something that she's not familiar with. But she loves doing research on her own. And I remember when she was doing Scourge of the Mechanical Men, which was her first one with me, she was posting on social media, like, she goes, oh my God, I'm getting into this research of what late 1800s socks look like. What did the socks look like? What did the shoes look like? So she gets that all right. And I would message her and say, like, if you need help with the research, I can send you more pictures and images and whatever you need. She's like, no. I'm like, this is good. I'm having fun here. But yeah, it's also helpful to have an artist who is that enthusiastic as well. And I've watched her grow through every issue. Like, I watched Emily grow, and they've both done a spectacular job.
How did you find her?
Well, Emily, I found through a mutual friend who was taking the same sequential art class that I was. And then I paid her to do audition pages from the script, and she nailed them. So I put her under contract for the 6 issues. And so, yeah, she obviously finished that. And Gwen, when Emily went on to bigger and better, I'd been on the con circuit for about 4 or 5 years by then. So I actually, I knew people and I could reach out to people. So I sent word out that I was looking for a new artist. And I was in Northern California for a small steampunk convention called Clockwork Alchemy. And a friend came up and said, oh, I think, why don't you take a look at Gwen Tavares? I think she might be good for Boston Metaphysical. And I said, sure. So I looked her up and I went like, yeah, that seems right. But before I could contact her, she actually contacted me. And I said, okay, send me your portfolio. And I says, okay, let me, pay you to do the sketch of Granville and Tesla, because they're going to be the leads. And I don't want to be surprised when I get the pages in. And she nailed it. Was just so beautiful. What she did was just fantastic. And I said, okay, you're hired. Here's your contract. And, and yeah, she's been with me ever since.
That's awesome. Yeah, I saw the cover image for the Book of Demons, and it's beautiful. I mean,
oh yeah,
like I use that. That's the background for your title image when this thing gets posted. So I mean, it's great. It's really well done. You have great talent around you. You're cultivating a wonderful series overall. Besides the audio drama, besides the next few issues, would you ever consider going back to pitching this as a series? Because I mean, we have the regulars on, Netflix type deal. I don't see why you couldn't do something like that.
Yeah, no, yes, I would definitely be open to that. I have been approached. I think it's one of those things that I have put so much time, energy, money, emotion, and everything into this, that I am very willing to wait for the right partner. And when the right partner comes along, then it'll happen. But I'm in no rush. I'm in absolutely no rush. I would much rather wait for the right fit to happen than just go like, oh, I must get this done. As a TV show. It's like, nah, it can wait. It can
That's
wait.
good. And you have so much on the go as it is. I mean, why would
Yeah.
you want something else on your plate, right?
Not right now, maybe later.
Fair enough. Going into some of your characters, though, obviously we have between Bell, Edison, Tesla, and Houdini, very famous people in their own right, and especially Houdini and the spiritual aspect of it. Why was the spiritual? What draws you to the spiritual when it comes to writing for this series?
Well, I wouldn't call it spiritual as I would refer to it as the paranormal.
Sorry, paranormal.
Uh, Mainly because it has to do with modern definitions and how the word metaphysical was used back in the 1800s. Today we use the term metaphysical more in terms of spirituality and connection to our inner selves and outer selves. It has a different definition now. Back then, it was just another term for the paranormal. And that's one of the reasons why we have this really long title called, Boston Metaphysical Society, because back then, they didn't call paranormal detective agencies paranormal detective agencies. They would call them a society or something else. So I chose words to evoke the time period deliberately. And so I've always had a lot of fun. I love stories of the supernatural because they're just, I think they're fun. Do I believe in ghosts and spirits and demons? No. Um, they're actually, for me as a writer, they're metaphors for humanity, for our alternate selves, for our emotions, and a reflection back on who we are. So, yeah, I do get interviewed sometimes from paranormal societies and things who are like, oh, you're looking for ghosts, you must believe in ghosts. Like, no, I actually don't, but I really enjoy ghost stories. Why not? They're fun. But they're the good ones are usually metaphors for something else, or they tell us something. They lead us on a mission of discovery, a journey to learn more about the character in question. And so that's how I use them. Not what you expected, huh?
No. I mean, I've been interviewing for 12 years. I mean, any answer can surprise me. How is this journey then from starting this to where you currently are? How's it changed yourself personally?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I've probably grown as a creator. I like to think that. I guess how it's changed me is being happy with what I'm doing and not worrying so much about the future. Like you said, I know, like, having come from the film industry, there was a time period in my life where I was like, oh, I got to get that agent. Oh, I got to get that manager. Oh, I got to get that film deal kind of thing. And, I've had stuff optioned and shopped and all that other fun stuff. And, it's got to do this, got to do that. And then to come to realize, like, no, I don't have to do that. I can do this. I can reach out, fortunately for creators like myself, there's a crowdfunding platforms now like Kickstarter and others where we can reach directly to potential fans and say, here, this is who I am. This is what I have to offer you. If you want it, great. If it's not your cup of tea, that's fine too. And so it just allows us to do what we want to do at our own pace and not worry about the rest of it.
Nice. Out of all the characters, who do you most relate to that you've created?
Uh, Probably Granville, oddly enough, because he's often the smartest person in the room. Caitlin, I mean, people go like, well, don't you relate to the female character? It's like, Caitlin and I come from different places, and which makes it very interesting to write her. But I have to say, I think, like with any writer, there's a little bit of ourselves in each of our characters. And her bucking up constantly against social norms and always pushing the envelope, and sometimes the envelope pushes back. That is, I've been pretty much doing that all my life. So that aspect of her is, in line with me. But, Granville's very methodical, scientific method is probably, I just, I like him.
He's a good character.
I like him. And he just doesn't take any BS either. They're just like, he's already been through so much in his life. And he doesn't sweat the small stuff at all. It's like, okay, this is just not important at all. You guys are getting upset. This is just not important. We need to focus on this other thing. And yeah, no, I enjoy his character, and I wish more people knew about him. He kind of got lost in American history, and I think it's because most of his inventions he sold to Bell and Westinghouse in order to make a living. Because unfortunately, being an African-American scientist during that time period, he couldn't go out and market it himself because no one would buy it from him directly. So he had to sell it to more established white men in order for it to go forward. So, there's stuff of his all over the place that we'll never know about because it was integrated into other people's technology.
Typical. No one ever gets the credit they deserve.
Yeah. Yes.
Whether it's 1800s or whether it's 2021 sometimes.
Yeah. The upshot is that his lawsuit against Edison was, what's the best term for it? It didn't set precedent for trademark and patent law today, but it was like the step of law, but step before that, it kind of set the path for it. And the reason I know this is that years ago at San Diego Comic-Con, a young lady came to my table and I started pitching it. And she goes, "Oh, I know all about Granville Woods." I went like, "What? Hardly anybody ever knows about him." She goes, "Oh no." She goes, "I'm a law student and my professor goes into the Library of Congress archives and he digs up all these old briefs and he used to talk about, Granville Woods and his lawsuit against Edison." I went like, wow, okay, that's pretty cool.
That's neat. Jeez. You learn something new every day. That's cool.
Oh yeah, we were very intrigued with that. That was great.
Being in a pandemic, obviously, everything changes. No more conventions, or it's virtual, or everything along that line. How are you, first dealing with the pandemic as a creator, and secondly, how's the Kickstarter been for you?
Well, as far as the pandemic, I am one of those very fortunate ones that I have not had to worry about being evicted or, having enough to eat. We're in a pretty good position that way, and I realize how fortunate we are in that respect. Both my husband and I are vaccinated now, so we were able to get that done. Actually, I got my second dose on Friday, so I'm kind of surprised that I'm coherent today. Yesterday, I was pretty under the weather, but today I'm much better.
That's good.
But no, it was hard. It was financially hard. Cons really bit into my bottom line quite a bit. Not, and just the social aspect of them, it was very, very difficult. And yeah, I've done a number of virtual cons, but it's just, it's not quite the same. I mean, they were great and I enjoyed them, but it's just, it can never be the same. It doesn't quite have the same energy as being at a live con. So we've muddled through and take long walks and walk the dogs and make sure I work out every day to stay sane, and that has all helped. And as far as the Kickstarter, we're doing very well. We were actually funded in 6 hours.
Oh, wow.
Which was a first for us. Normally we fund within 24 to 48. So that's what is historically. But this just kind of went crazy. And thank you to everyone who has backed. We're moving on to, I think, our 8th stretch goal.
Oh, wow.
And we're at, I guess, over 550 backers at over 17,000 right now. So we have a ton of stretch goals that have already been met, including a gorgeous pinup by Roberta in Granada, who is doing Doctor Who right now and has done Penny Dreadful. Another pinup by Ashley Woods, who's done Niobe and Bitterroot and a bunch of other things. We have a ton of digital comic bundles, magnets, and of course, our brand new pin. We have a Plague Doctor pin, which seemed appropriate for the time. And Alejandro Lee designed that for us and did a terrific job. There's a picture of it up on the Kickstarter page. And I can tell you, it doesn't do it justice. I actually have them, and they look better than the one that's photographed on the page. So I'm really pleased with how that turned out.
Do you have one around?
I do. The magnets that came in.
Oh,
can you look at that?
Yep.
That's one magnet. That's the other one.
Yep.
You can.
Yep, I see that.
See that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, that's all Alejandro's work.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he did a great job.
Cool.
So yeah, he's a great artist. He also did our coloring book.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, we have a coloring book as well.
I saw some of the pledges that you have there. I mean, great selection overall too, and congratulations on being funded as well. And 18 days left as of this particular interview, which is great. You have way more time to have more stretch goals, so congratulations on that.
Yeah, no, we were. It was like, okay. I guess I need to get the stretch goals out. And that's another thing I tell people. I don't know if you know this. I wrote a book called Kickstarter for the Independent Creator. I wrote it a few years back. It's a second edition out now. It has a green cover. Yeah. I do update it every year after I do a Kickstarter for any changes, because this is a constantly evolving platform. So things are always small little things are going to change, and particularly with fulfillment and postage, as you can imagine. So yeah, that's on Amazon and all ebook platforms, of course. Yeah, as I tell people in that book, you should always have pre-planned at least and pre-budgeted at least 3 stretch goals before you launch. Because what I've seen in the past is people, they do well, better than they thought. And they say, oh my God, we need to have stretch goals. And they thought, okay, this will be cool and that'll be cool, but they don't budget for it. So they end up losing money because it costs more to produce it than what they set up the stretch goal to be. Yeah. So you always need to make sure you're covered. If it's a print, make sure, printing costs are covered. What you pay the artist is covered, and a little extra as buffer in case for some reason, your print run turns out terrible and the company won't refund or redo and you have to go do it again. And, that's just one example of what could happen. So you always have to add a little buffer to take care of anything, that comes out of the blue that you didn't expect.
Yeah, it's a second full-time job is
yes.
I've gone through it myself, and I know other creators like yourself have gone through it too. And more power to you if you can get past 1, 2, 3, or 4. I mean, you're doing something right.
Yeah, this is my 9th Kickstarter, so yeah, it's not my first rodeo.
Fair enough. Everyone has one or two people that kind of inspire them on their path to where they are today. Who was that for you?
That's tough. I guess for comics, I would talk about the mentors I had and how fortunate I was to have them. And I met a couple of them through the sequential art class I took. And the fact that they took the time to educate me on the business side of comics was invaluable, and introduce me to people that might be helpful to me in the future. And some other old friends of mine who happened to to get into the movie industry, but yet still love comics, and new people from the comics industry. So yeah, I had about 3 mentors who really helped me make sure Boston Metaphysical turned out well. And without that help, I just don't think that would have happened.
You can name them if you'd like.
I certainly can. One is Christina Strain. She was in my sequential art class. Was pretty amazing. The level of people in there. For those of you who don't know her, at the time she was a colorist for Marvel, and has gone on to not only do webcomics but write. She has a movie on Netflix called Finding Ohana, and she's one of the staff writers on the new fantasy series Shadow and Bone.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is. It's start on Netflix. She's amazing. Another woman, Han Yi. She was the one who introduced me to Emily, and has gone on to bigger and better. Dave Elliott, who introduced me to my first colorist and taught me what a color palette was, because I hadn't a clue. And of course, Nunzio De Felipe and his wife, Christina Ware. He was my instructor, and I learned a ton from him, and he encouraged me 300% to keep going. And my fellow classmates, George Wasall, there's Keith, and there's just it was an amazing high level group of people. And you talk about dumb luck of just happening to go into that class with those people in it was just amazing. And I mean, I can't thank them enough for the time they spent and the education they gave me. It was, I hope they're proud of me and that their time was well spent. I think they are. I think they are. I'm still in contact with them. So yeah.
Well, if they watch this interview, then I hope they blush and have a pint for you or whatever. From a professional standpoint, you have had success in the film industry. You've also had success as a creator and writer with, of course, your series, Boston Metaphysical Society. I'm still going to stumble over those words. From a personal perspective, do you feel that you're successful?
Yes, I do. There's absolutely, whenever every creator gets those little inklings of doubt in their mind, I think that's normal. I think that's very human. But whenever that happens, I go and look at my last Kickstarter page and just say, like, I'm good. I'm good. We keep growing every year. We keep growing. It's small, it's incremental. That's fine. It's growth I can deal with, and on a lot of levels, both professionally and emotionally and budgetarily. So yeah, I would say so. When you can fund in 6 hours, I would call that a success.
How about from a more personal perspective rather than financial? Do you consider
Hmm.
yourself successful that way?
From a personal, yes, just because I've been able to tell the story I wanted to tell. Absolutely. I'm telling the story I want to tell. I did. I wish I could clone myself because there are other stories in other universes that I would like to do, but Boston Metaphysical is the bread and butter. So I do have to spend the majority of my time on this. But yeah, I would definitely like to go and look at and delve into other things that I've had on the back burner for quite a while.
The reverse of success is failure. How do you deal with your failures?
You probably don't know this, but I used to be a competitive fencer when I was younger. I was nationally ranked, and I had a coach at one time who said, when I lost a bout, you're allowed to be upset about it for 30 seconds because you do have to have acknowledge those emotions, but then you need to move on. So, it may not be 30 seconds now, but if the failure is like, you're allow yourself to feel those emotions, to be sad, to be upset, get it out of your system, and then move on.
The younger generation are looking at your work and they're becoming inspired to be creative in their own right, whether it's creatively through graphic novels, whether it's through film, whether it's through writing, or whatever they'd like to do. How can they inspire the generation that follows them?
I'm trying to phrase this correctly. Not allowing any naysayers to stop them. Just continue with the path, continue to grow, allow yourself to be to hear, I should say, to hear criticism of your work, and I should say constructive criticism of your work, so you can become better, but still keep pushing forward. I know some people are like, the push. They want to keep creating, and that's great. But if the work isn't getting better, then they will stagnate creatively. So you do need trusted voices in your universe who can say like, hey, this is good, but I think if you did XYZ, this can be better. But the through line here is, I want people to keep creating what they want to create and not necessarily what other people feel they should be creating.
You know, Madeline, I really hate to do this, but before we end the show, tell
Mm-hmm.
us where we can find all your social media and your presence with Boston Metaphysical and any other social media you'd like to promote.
Sure. Website is bostonmetaphysicalsociety.com. Facebook is Boston Metaphysical Society Comic. Twitter, the handle is M Holly Rosing. Instagram, it's MC Holly1, the numeral 1. And of course, we're on Kickstarter. You just need to type in Boston Metaphysical Society or go to the website and click through the links there and take a look at what we have. We are live until April 29th. So you have a little time, but not a lot of time. So get out there and pledge as soon as you can, or share, or tweet, or repost. That's good too.
It's all great. Well, thank you again, Madeline, for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it. I had a fun time with you, and I'd love to have you back on whenever you have something new.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Anytime. So that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. You can, of course, find this work on our website, tgtmedia.com. You can, of course, find our YouTube channel at youtube.com/c/TGT Media for thousands of interviews I've done over the past 12 years. And it's in every aspect of geekdom. It's from TV, film, comic, movies, and video games. So whatever wets your whistle. Other than that, thanks for listening, watching. Tune in next week for another great interview with another talented person, because everyone has a story to tell, and it's up to me to help bring that out. Thanks for watching. Hey, all, Kurt Sasso here from Two Geeks Talking. If you like this video and these quick clips here, make sure you take a look at our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TGT Media. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe as well. Hit the bell to make sure you get notifications, of course, from videos like this here. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching over the years, and keep listening and watching for new and exciting interviews with talented and creative people in the entertainment industry. I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. Thank you so much.